this, and then stop that one, go here. Here's from this one. Oh, this one. Sure. Okay. And welcome. Okay, welcome to Connect Live by CX Forums. This is our 18th edition. We've been doing this every week. We're here every Wednesday from 1:30 until 2:30. Today, I'm very pleased to bring in our special guest host, Jim Bass, who's from Atlanta. He's a very active CX person with a CCXP and all that. And he's going to be interviewing also a person from Atlanta, another good friend from the local CXPA chapter, Brian Powers, the CXO of Brightstar. Gentlemen, the stage is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting us both to join CX Connects and to be a guest interviewer. So very happy to be here. Brian, great to see you. Thank you so much for your time as well. So before we get into the details, just real quick, Brian is the global CXO of Brightstar. And as we go into some of the interview, we'll learn a little bit more about Brightstar and a little bit about what he's been doing from a customer experience perspective lately. I got really inspired by something he posted a couple of months ago on LinkedIn. And he had, with Brightstar, implemented a customer feedback program using Medallia. And those of you who know me know I'm a big Medallia promoter. So this is not a Medallia interview, but the tool is extremely important. But I think what really got me on this is in this project that he did called Feedback as a Gift. It was really about the taking action. So you can have the best tools, but if you're not actually taking action and you don't have organizational commitment, all of your plans will fall flat. So I think what the success that Brian had here was really about taking action. So that's really where I want to focus today. So Brian, give us a couple of minutes, a few moments, not a couple of minutes, a few moments to tell us a little bit about Brightstar and what your role is there. And about the business problem or the experience problem that you were setting out to solve in the Feedback as a Gift project.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Mark, for hosting and asking me to speak today. So I've been with Brightstar just over a year, almost a year and a half, joining January of last year. I'm based in Alpharetta, north of Atlanta in Georgia, but we're a global company. So 3,000 employees. I have 16 call centers in 9 countries. 550 employees. And my charge as CXO is to be in charge of that customer journey end to end across all of our products. Our primary service offering today is providing insurance for people who have mobile phones, devices, and gadgets. So we just heard somebody was in Seaside. My son was in Seaside last week, dropped his phone, cracked the back. That's what we do. We're here to help when you have an issue like that or your device is lost. So we can help replace that very quickly. What are we trying to solve for? So I was recruited by the CEO. We had a CRO on the front end and a COO on the back end, but we didn't have a person that owned the end-to-end experience. So it kind of fell through the gaps. Net Promoter Score was very low. Trustpilot score was 1.4 out of 5. Horrible, right? Used more in EMEA and other markets than our own. And calls were outrageous. So they really wanted to focus on experience. They saw the value and focusing on that end-to-end journey, listening to the customers and acting on the feedback.
Awesome. So as you began to look at this problem to solve and filling some of those gaps, how did you get organizational commitment for this project? And when I asked that, I'm asking too a little bit about what were some of the targeted measures or metrics that you were going after, and what are some of those vendors that you also considered in partnering with in this project?
Huge tech stack, right? And we all have many vendors. We've got many of our vendors and vendor partners on today. So they become, like I said, more of a partner than a vendor once selected, but you go through RFPs. I can mention if anybody, this is how I found Medallia. It was on a forum like this, another panel member, and I connected afterwards. I gained feedback about several different enterprise feedback management companies like Medallia. And that's how we ended up, getting the RFP and choosing them. The burning platform here was, we saw at a senior level that having a good reputation management score, not just NPS, but how does the public view you, and competitors and your own clients, helps provide you a path for winning new business and keeping those that you have today. So it's double-edged. So they saw that an investment in NPS and reputation management was worthwhile. So it's not just through those surveys, but independent sources that are out there as well. So that was why we started building these ROI stories for investing in surveys, investing in a new email platform, updating our IVR, getting our agents to work remote. And I can go into more detail on that in a second.
I think you mentioned also on your LinkedIn post that it was pretty quick. It's like a 60-day, I guess, from contract execution to getting it launched or even getting it going.
It was, and maybe because I came from the industry, formerly with Nice Systems, these contracts and implementations can take a long time, right? Getting that feed file, getting the dashboards the way you want it, getting legal and marketing to agree on the question set, right? So we had an exhaustive number of questions, so we whittled it down from 10 down to 4 for some, 5 for others. We buried the first question in the survey invitation. We set the expectation up front that this survey will only take 2 minutes, and then we add that verbatim at the end, right? So our response rates doubled when we converted over to Medallia, and the insights were much more rich. And we can use their dashboard to, and I know this sounds like a commercial for them, but we use it for text analytics, we use it to close the loop and follow up, and we've expanded the use in some other areas. But the point is, we're using it across OmniTouch, all the different touch points, and we really are acting on that feedback.
Love it. And so you mentioned the feedback. Well, what did you learn from this feedback? And as a result, what kind of changes did you make?
The biggest insight of all is that we didn't realize how tough our processes were, right? So I have 2 UI UX product managers, and they're just, really too close to the process that things like claims adjudication affidavit forms made sense, but it scared the bejesus out of our customers. So we hired a local consulting firm one spring to give us an outside in, and I know it's a Forrester term, but do some focus groups, look at our process, see how that resonates with the average American, and it didn't. What we thought was easy and understandable was not. What we thought was easy for the next call to action was not evident. So they helped us change the flow, make things more visible, so our digital containment rate increased, reducing the need for people to call in. People don't want to have to call in. Even with 14 call centers, I don't want people to call me. We want that to be more proactive, intent-driven, give them the updates they want, let them do self-service. We call it tier 0. Let them service themselves.
I love that tier 0 concept. Yeah, because people want to just solve it and move on. They don't want to have to stop and interact and then submit tickets and then have to go through all that volley, right? Whether email or chat or whatever it might be, they want to just be able to keep moving.
Exactly.
So as you gather this feedback and this learnings, and as you begin to make these changes, tell us a little bit about what were some of the biggest challenges that you encountered and maybe how you addressed them.
We updated our website. We made it a better process. We improved all the email. I took the phone number, not off the emails, but we put it at the bottom. We used to have it at the top. But one of the challenges, people kept calling us. So I employed a search engine optimization firm to hide our phone numbers. People would go out and Google, Yahoo Land, they go to our website and they would see our phone number. So we started removing that and encouraging a digital first strategy. If you go to our website, you'll immediately find the phone number, but we didn't want that to be the first course of action. So trying to change customer behavior started with making it simpler to find our digital path. Second of all, getting funding for these kind of CX projects is always a challenge, right? You're battling with an existing roadmap filled with urgent roadmap needs, like within an agile environment, they're only planning out a couple releases. So to move survey change onto the roadmap was key. You just have to back everything up with an ROI. And for the first time ever as a company, they're asking to audit my ROI after a project launched. So we promised these lofty gains, and then they're coming back and saying, okay, did you deliver on that? And I've never had that before. Usually you can kind of, you can throw extra, indirect savings into an ROI story. But now we're showing that value is there. The savings is proven, the retention is better, calls are down, and NPS is up. So there's a true ROI story that we can prove, which leads to us getting more funding.
That's great. And so, maybe tell us a little bit more about those results of this project. And, not just from the customer perspective or the business perspective, which is, the scores that you were able to achieve, but maybe more from the employee perspective. Did this engage them more? Did it improve their experience? How about from a customer perspective? Were you seeing big changes in comments and their engagement and the way that they related to you?
Yeah, so CX first. So big gains. The online trust pilot is now a 4.1 out of 5 stars. Also, our net promoter score rose 20 points last year.
Wow.
Of course, my boss wants another 20 this year, which is just a reach. Calls per claim or calls per incident went down 25%.
Wow. And how quickly did that happen? Be able to drop those calls per incident?
It took a while, right? Because of the roadmap, we had to update the IVR, change our survey, update the email platform. We started texting customers. So on a roadmap level, it just gradually increased throughout the year. There was no spike. And you have to set expectations that this is going to take a while for these things to be earned in. And that's on the reputation and CX side. The employees took a sense of pride. I send out a weekly email to the call center employees and a monthly email to the whole company about our plans and recent accomplishments and recognizing people. In the call center, the employee experience is key, right? They hear about automation, call deflection, call reduction, and they think people reduction. And so I'm very sensitive to that. In that I go back and I say, what we're focusing on here is raising the level of your cranial capabilities, not to do a status call, which should be just a chat bot, or we send it to them up front, and instead let them handle more complex tasks. Also, they get to see the long-term roadmap of what improvements are coming, because they like doing the chat. They like the idea of a chat bot, but not as a replacement to what they do. But now they're becoming, instead of tier 1, tier 2, they're becoming tier 2, tier 3. They're handling much more complex interactions.
I love it. So this is, you've been able to really cast a wide net here with this project and just really in all kinds of outcomes throughout the business, for your customers, for your employees. So, and now you mentioned that your boss wants 20 more points out of NPS. So I was going to ask you, what's next with this? I mean, are you taking this to another level, or what's the next play for you guys?
We have much more to do in the way of mobile app. We're launching mobile app chat next week with a UK client. We want to be in the touch point of the customer's choosing. So if they want to call us, we're ready to do that. We want to steer them online if possible. If they're able to complete the task online, their NPS is almost double what it is if they have to call. It's like filing your taxes on the phone versus on your own pace online. Trust me, it's better online. So we're trying to change those behaviors more and more. We're doing a lot more proactive messaging of status. It's almost like if you're at a restaurant and they say your table will be ready in 20 minutes, message that person before 20 minutes if it's going to be later than that. So we're starting to do that now based on the customer's feedback. They're like, it's okay. I was waiting for my phone. If I had only known it would have been another day, I wouldn't have been at my mailbox waiting for it to appear, right? So people are okay with a wait as long as you're upfront about it. And then we did chat. Chat's working okay. It's not as good as I hoped. It's not as efficient. We're finding it's 13 minutes a session. They can only do 2 parallel sessions. We can't get to 3. So chatbot will help hold people's hands along that process.
That's great. I love that you're actually bringing that transparency component in, because it is so critical. I don't mind waiting 20 minutes, but if it's going to be longer, you got to let me know. Manage my expectations.
And we launched another initiative where we tell people, okay, your phone will be arriving in 2 days. If you want it next day, fine, pay an extra $20. And what we found is the NPS rose for the people who wanted to wait because they knew they had an option and they chose not to do it. Before, it would take 2 days and they were just upset anyway.
Gotcha. Well, we've got a couple of questions here, so I want to be mindful of the time. Marcy, I think you've got the first one out there. If you want to turn your video on and unmute and ask your question.
I would love to. Okay, great. So Brian, it's a pleasure to see you on video. It's been quite a while.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your experience. So the question I have, I recently joined INAP, which is an IT infrastructure company, and we are in the process of looking at all of our customer surveys. So we have what I would call event surveys, and then we have our end-to-end surveys. We really need to improve our response percent on our event surveys. So for example, after a ticket's closed. So I'm just curious, can you speak a little bit more about what your kind of event survey invitation looks like, maybe some of the questions, and what you think, if you were recommending something to increase response, what that would be? I'd love to hear it.
Great question, because I was with NICE for 7 years doing this. I ran AT&T's program with 160 million surveys a year, so we learned a lot. Texting gets the highest response rates. After an in-person interaction, we were seeing 35 to 40% response rates. For a care interaction, it was around 25%, which is still better than what you're getting from email, typically from an event-based survey. You can add an incentive. I'm working through that now. You got to be careful by country. Canada's really sticky about the regulations, and it can't be a game of chance. It's got to be filed with the government. And in the US, you just roll with it, right? So if there's a possibility of a person getting a Bluetooth headset, for example, in a monthly drawing, your scores are going to go up. They might be falsely positive, so you'll have a point of inflection. But the whole idea there is you're going to get more responses. So if you want statistically significant data, then you'll get more responses. Also, if you can find a survey provider that rotates the questions. So if you go to marketing, they're going to have 20 questions they want to ask, and you get survey fatigue. So if you can find a way to rotate the least important questions, you get enough responses without burdening everybody with an exhaustive survey. We're all over surveyed at this point, and I fill out every survey I get. I'm just exhausted.
Okay,
great. Thank you so much, Marcy, for that. We also have Carl. Carl Charisse, you've got a question as well. You want to unmute and turn on your video as well?
Sure, thank you. So Brian, when you said the words a rise of 20 points in NPS, my ears perked up on that one, because I've been in a similar situation. First of all, who is responsible? Who is actually responsible for that? Who has to take the hit if you don't get that? Because I'm thinking to myself here, if you're sitting with a 20 NPS and somebody says you need to get that up to 40, I could say, yeah, that's probably doable. But if you're at 80 and somebody gives you that charge and now you need to get it to 100, that's patently impossible. So I guess my question is two parts. Who's responsible for that? And then how do you have that conversation with leadership? And I've been there before too, so I kind of know what that's like.
Thanks, Carl. Very insightful. And we are starting at a low point. So I did have that going for me, a little bit better than a cable company. And I was asked, what's my goal? And I said, well, cable companies are here, telecom's here, insurance is a little better. So I want to be as good as USAA. So I want to get up to 50. And the CEO said, well, what's Apple's NPS? And I Googled it. I said 72. And he said, well, the goal is 73. So to your point, right, they might say, okay, how about 101, which isn't possible, right? I mean, even Tesla's in the 80s. But when you buy a phone, your NPS is in the mid to high 80s. So when you service a phone, it drops to the 30s, right? So we're dealing with, a lot of these are service-based inquiries where they're already unhappy. So what we found, I did a correlation study to find the number of things that are most tied to NPS, and its number of days to resolve an inquiry. So we're focusing on any way we can crash that, right? And then setting proper expectations is key. Somebody else's comment was that proactive messaging is so important, right? So we were doing an email update and they weren't getting opened, right? Our open rate was under 50%. And this is people who want their phone repaired. It's like an extra appendage. You need your phone. So now we're updating them. We're sending them the status. We're giving them a tracking number because I want a service like Apple and message like Amazon and be more proactive. And people are appreciating and responding to it. There's going to be a point of diminishing returns, and we get that. So it's not going to be, hey, raise it 20 points every year. We just know that that's not sustainable.
So when you, just a further clarification, is that an event-based NPS?
Yes. Which
Okay.
is versus relationship where you pull in the silent majority and your score is going to jump because the people who don't have any issues don't call you. They're the happiest. So I'd love to roll them into the survey.
Yeah. I guess we could have another conversation another time about metric obsession, but I'll leave it at that.
The alphabet soup,
Yeah, I think we've got
acronyms, right?
We've got another good question, and I just want to be mindful of the time. Lorraine Schumacher, I think you want to kind of build on this a little bit. Do you want to come off of mute and turn on your video and ask your question?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, hi, Brian, it's a long time, no chat. But let's kind of maybe talk about a little bit about, it's not the number, right? You want to be better than USAA. How are you going to get there?
Right.
How are you actually educating your C-suite on the value of business value versus a score versus, an ROI on your CFO's bottom line statement?
Agreed. Yeah. So very timely. We had an escalation to one of our Canadian clients. The CEO's tennis partner had an issue with our service. And that kind of a one-off negates the 700,000 other claims that we manage during the year. So they hone in on those and they keep coming back to them. So it was an edge case. It happens 4 times a year. It happened then. So what we want.
But it was your crisis du jour?
Yeah, that was the crisis of a whole weekend. Yeah, that was right. So yeah, never mind that we have 700,000 others that go well. It's those that they spotlight on. But the key is that it's got to be sustained. It's got to be funded. And that it's important to, CX is important to retaining your existing customers, not just winning new ones. So, and we can show that through retention. More customers that we retain, we multiply by customer life cycle value, and it's an actual number. We can point to that as savings, but it requires ongoing investment, right? These are SaaS-based companies in our tech stack. We don't just buy a company like Medallia service, it's a license. So that means it's an ongoing commitment, ongoing payment. And if that stops, then these numbers start to degrade. But it's more than that. It's about people, to your point. So when I do my monthly updates, I include some customer comments and a name. Just it personifies when people are happy or not, what they like and what they don't, and that we need continued investment.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much for the great questions, everyone. I think we're looking at time again. So I just want to thank you, Brian, for your time and for sharing with us. Again, my hat's off to you and your team who under your leadership have really taken action on the feedback. Didn't just put a tool out there and do scorecards. What do they call them? When they put them up on
Scoreboarding.
Scoreboarding. It wasn't just scoreboarding, it was taking action and being a little agile with it, a little iterative and far-reaching impact. So hats off to you, congratulations, and I'll turn it back over to Mark now.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, Jim and Brian. That was very insightful. As an old researcher guy myself, I'm used to looking at a lot of metrics, and it's fascinating to me that they even try an NPS within a quasi B2B environment, but you do have the consumers with electronics, so I get that. But we're done with this portion of our fireside chat of the show. We're getting ready to move into our networking, which we do every week. We've got a great group here. So if you're hanging out for the networking, we'd love to see you. I'm just going to be putting everyone into rooms in just a second. So in the meantime, do join us next week. We have Steve Simpson. He's going to talk about unwritten ground rules, UGRs, and how they play into culture in general. And Steven's from Australia, so he's going to be up really early for our chat. And I hope you can make it for next week. You'll be getting a replay of this, and there will be instructions there on how to join for next week, which you can register for. So I'm going to play a really quick outro, and then we're going to move into our networking. So here we go. All right, and I'm just going to turn off our video.